What was hidden never truly stayed buried. Some wounds do not bleed immediately. They wait. After Jaiwoo's surgery, the city returned to its rhythm. Traffic resumed. Deadlines chased ambition. News cycles moved on. To the world, the Kang divorce was old gossip. But inside Minyi, something had shifted, and not in a comforting way. He visited Jaiwoo often, though never without hesitation. Every knock on her apartment door carried a question he was afraid to ask. Was he there because he loved her? Or because guilt had finally found him? Jaiwoo noticed the difference. She noticed how he stayed longer than necessary, how he listened too carefully, how his eyes searched her face for forgiveness she had never promised to give. "You don't have to come every day," she said gently one evening. "I know," Minyi replied. "I just want to." She smiled, but something in her eyes stayed guarded. Healing had taught her caution. 3 months later, Minyi received an envelope that had no sender. Inside were printed documents, medical records, dates circled in red, and one ultrasound image. Minyi sat down slowly. His hands shook as he read. Jaiwoo had been pregnant once. The pregnancy had failed, quietly, painfully, during the worst months of their marriage. During the time he barely came home. During the weeks Seo-yeon had become his emotional refuge. Minyi felt the room tilt. He remembered Jaiwoo's sudden weight loss back then, her frequent exhaustion, the nights she turned away from him in bed. She hadn't been cold. She had been grieving. Alone. Minyi went to Jaiwoo's apartment without calling. She opened the door and immediately knew. "You found out," she said softly. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, voice cracking. Jaiwoo looked away. "Because you were already gone," she replied. "And because I didn't want you to stay out of obligation." Minyi's knees gave way. He sat down, covering his face. "I failed you," he whispered. Jaiwoo said nothing. She had learned that apologies did not resurrect the past. Seo-yeon had not disappeared. She had simply been waiting. When Minyi stepped down temporarily from the company, Seo-yeon moved quickly. She positioned herself as stability, as loyalty, as the woman who had always been there. What Minyi didn't know was that Seo-yeon had been the anonymous source who leaked the hotel photos. Nor did he know she had intercepted messages Jaiwoo once sent him, messages asking for help, asking for presence, asking not to be alone. Seo-yeon believed love was strategy. And she hated that Jaiwoo still mattered. Jaiwoo returned to university quietly. She took the bus. She sat in the back of classrooms. She studied with the intensity of someone who knew time could betray her again. One night, she collapsed outside the campus gate. This time, Minyi was not the one called. A stranger was. A man named Jun Hyuk, her study partner, patient, kind, and very much aware of her fragility. When Minyi arrived at the hospital hours later, he saw Jaiwoo laughing weakly with Jun Hyuk. The sight did something ugly to his chest. Jealousy. Fear. Loss. For the first time, Minyi understood what it meant to be replaceable. Weeks passed. Jaiwoo grew stronger. Minyi grew quieter. One evening, standing under the cherry blossoms near the Han River, Minyi finally asked the question he had avoided. "If I had stayed, if I had listened, would you have chosen me?" Jaiwoo took a long time before answering. "I don't know," she said honestly. But love shouldn't require someone to almost die to be noticed. The words hurt more than anger ever could. Minyi did something no one expected. He resigned permanently. Not for Jaiwoo. Not for redemption. But because he finally understood that success built on silence eventually collapses. Seo-yeon watched from her office window as his name was removed from the company directory. She had won the company. She had lost the man. Jaiwoo watched from afar as Minyi rebuilt his life quietly, without cameras, without applause. They did not rush back into each other's arms. They did something harder. They learned to exist without ownership. Love does not always come back the way it left. Sometimes it returns as a question. Sometimes as regret. Sometimes as a quiet hope that says, if we meet again, let us speak before we bleed.